Hello, Frontstretch family. Welcome back to another Grassroots Rundown, our second of the season with the ZMAX Cars Tour. We just watched an absolutely wild night at Wake County Speedway. I'm Chase Folsom here with Luken Glover. I don't really know where to start because we had a guy who hasn't won in almost 4 years. We had two of the fan favorites in the series wanting to fight each other after the race, and then two guys who were wrecked and around backwards halfway through the race finished second and third. So I guess we'll start with the winner, Mini Tyrell, for the first time in 3 years and 7 months. Don't know the days, don't ask me. Tri-County 2021 was the last time that Mini Tyrell found Cars Tour victory lane, but he found it again tonight. You talked to him afterwards. I'm sure he was excited. What did he have to say?
Yeah, I mean, the emotions were obviously running high for him. I mean, when you've went on such a long winless drought, you kind of start doubting yourself. I mean, you hear the best drivers say it, that confidence starts to slip a little. So with a race like tonight, where it's caution after caution, especially there at the end, you know, that doubt can start creeping in. But thankfully, he said he had a really good car, and we saw it all night long, just absolutely dominated. Won the pole, led all the laps, ended up getting the win at the end. So you could just see the emotion. As I was talking to him, driver after driver came by and congratulated him on his victory. So he was just a very proud and very humble person tonight. Obviously, with his team and with his dad, he was very emotional about that and being able to get his team back to victory lane. But overall, just a really excited driver tonight.
Absolutely. I mean, he absolutely had the best car tonight. I don't think there's any doubts about that. That thing fired off better than a late model that I've seen here in a long time. And Landon Huffman might have had something for him on the long runs, but we just never got any long runs. The cautions kept falling in the wrong spots, and just as the 57 would get going, we'd have another yellow. Speaking of Landon Huffman, battling for second late in the race with Ryan Millington, they make contact. What did you see of it from your perspective?
Yeah, I mean, what you saw a lot of tonight was guys who were able to get a really good arc off of turn 4 and then able to drive it down into turn 1. And so it looked like maybe Millington just kind of overdrove it a little bit, and once they got into each other, it was just chaos from there. But what you saw, I mean, you saw a little bit of impatience there for sure at the end. Guys who are trying to throw their car in the corner as much as they can, make sure and makes it stick. But ultimately, Huffman and Millington came together there, and I mean, it was kind of a racing deal in a way, but obviously when it happens that late in the race and you're battling for the win, there's going to be some hurt feelings, but just a little bit of impatience maybe. But overall, it's kind of a racing deal and kind of really what embodies this night tonight.
Absolutely. I mean, Landon wasn't that far inside of him, but he had a nose there. He said that Millington should have left him a lane. Ryan said that he was far enough ahead that Landon should have lifted. At the end of the day, they're probably never gonna agree with each other. You're racing for second, and in Ryan's perspective, you know, you live to fight another lap. From Landon's perspective, there's 13 laps to go and you're trying to catch the leader. You got to go now. So at the end of the night, they had a altercation post-race. Scott Millington, Ryan's dad, was involved. No punches were thrown, but there were some interesting words thrown around. I can't say all of them. Maybe a good quote or two. Go listen to the altercation video on Frontstretch Grassroots YouTube. Other news, Connor Hall, Doug Barnes Jr., a pair of 88s round out the podium. You caught up with both of them. How'd they recap their nights?
Yeah, it was kind of two very different reactions. With Connor Hall, he admitted from the very get-go of the weekend, they just didn't seem to have it. He was struggling with the speed of his race car times, sometimes the handling just to turn into corners, and ultimately he comes away with a second-place finish and able to fight throughout the night. He even admitted just because of the chaos and the attrition that we saw there at the end, you know, that helped a lot. And so he had a shot at there at the end. Had a couple shots there at Mini Tyrell, but ultimately I think he's very grateful to get a second-place finish. But as for Doug, he was not too happy. Obviously, we saw him get turned around at the beginning of the race, and he was frustrated really just with the competition tonight. He was frustrated with, as we talked about with Millington and Landon Huffman, just guys not given much space. He felt like more space could have been left. But overall, I know he was pleased to get at least third, but felt like he probably had a car that could have competed for the win.
Yeah. So I'll ask you, it seems to be the theme of tonight is aggression and guys not leaving enough space. We saw up at Martinsville with the Xfinity Series today, a lot of chaos, a lot of incidents that were probably crossing the line of fair and foul. As you watched this 125 laps tonight, did you see incidents that were crossing that line, or do you think we were on the edge of what is fair in short track racing?
I think based on what we were able to hear and gather from the Martinsville race and what we saw tonight, you saw what happens when you have a very tight, I mean, this is obviously one of the shortest tracks out here, a very tightly confined speedway, a bull ring as it is, and guys overthrowing their cars at times. I don't know, I would say a line was ever crossed. We never saw guys make desperate moves or take desperate measures to try to get to front, because obviously no one had anything from mini Tyrell at the end of the night. But versus what you saw with Martinsville, we saw a lot of guys who were just doing some unnecessary, inappropriate things with their cars, whether it's throwing it in there or hooking guys. And so I think you see that line tonight of short track racing at the grassroots level, especially a car store, versus what happens when guys get a little bit too comfortable with their situation and where they're at. So there's that line. I will say, I can understand the frustrations for sure. I think anyone could. But ultimately, we saw tonight, I thought was just a lot of racing incidents out there that came from just a little bit too much aggression at times, especially as we got to that climax and up to the end of the race.
Yeah, I mean, when you're racing on a quarter mile, there's going to be tempers, there's going to be aggression, there's going to be hurt feelings. It's part of it. That is short track racing by nature. You're always going to have that no matter what series it is or who is racing in the series. But I think you're right. There is a difference between what we saw here tonight and what we saw at Martinsville. What we saw at Martinsville is it's not racing. There's not enough, and I'll use this to take a shot at what happened in the Xfinity race tonight at Martinsville. There's not enough racecraft being shown at the higher levels of the sport. And a lot of that has to do with how those drivers got there. A lot of that has to do with money. A lot of that has to do with the fact that they don't work on their own race cars. All these guys here tonight, 95% of them have to fix their own race cars. So if you go out and you wreck your own car in the process of wrecking somebody else, you physically have to pay the price for it because your next 2 weeks is going to be spent rebuilding that race car. Right. So I think that's why we see the difference. There is a fine line between the two, and it's not that far apart, and I think some people have a hard time seeing the difference, but there is a difference, and I think at the higher levels of the sport, there seriously needs to be some looks taken at how we prevent what happened at Martinsville and how we get closer to what happened here tonight. Any final thoughts from you from Wake County?
Well, on that point, I think when we come to that line, it's what we saw here tonight at Wake County, where guys, as you mentioned, their cars got torn up. And so you see people upset because they have to fix their cars, and that costs a lot more money, and the money isn't flowing in like it is in the Xfinity Series. Whereas with the Xfinity Series, you see tempers flare, maybe from crew guys, maybe from owners because of that equipment damage, but mostly because of pride. Where it's, hey, that should have been my win, or that should have been my fifth place finish. And so it carries on, and there's really not an end point to it because guys say, oh, he took my finish away last week, so let me take his this week. Whereas with this, it's he tore up my equipment. I mean, when I was talking to Doug Bowles there, it was more so I'm not going to retaliate just to retaliate, but if that opportunity is presented, then I'm going to remember this incident. But he's not out there to tear someone's equipment up, and so I think that's the line you saw. But overall, it was a very, as you said, not really sure how to put this race tonight, kind of at a loss for words. You had one guy who you don't see a race much where one guy dominates the whole thing and leads every lap, and then the guys behind him are still angry as if this was a back and forth slugfest out there, right, for baseball terms. So, yeah, overall. But we saw a lot of madness. It is March, and we saw a lot of March Madness tonight here at Wake County.
Absolutely. I think to summarize it all, what is happening in the car store is ultimately a good thing, and the short track racing at the higher levels is fundamentally broken. So I'm going to leave it at that. Support your local short tracks as always. Get out to a car store race or any local short track race you can find your way to. We will be at, we're at ASA Stars at Dominion next weekend, and then in a couple weeks we'll be down at the car store race at Cordele Motor Speedway for the car store's first ever trip to the state of Georgia. For Luken Glover, I've been Chase Folsom. So long from America's favorite bull ring. Hey race fans, I'm Chase Folsom with Frontstretch.com. If you enjoyed the short track video you just watched, please be sure to subscribe to Frontstretch Grassroots on YouTube for more Cars Tour, ARCA, and other grassroots racing content. Check out Frontstretch.com for all your racing needs.